everyone, happy Christmas, hope you're keeping well. Sorry I've been quiet for a while again. This is part of the reason why. It's not evenings spent by the wood burner, but because I had to put in concrete hearth and sort out the back here with plastering it, and yeah, lots of bits and pieces, and it also has led to me taking up the vinyl flooring in my, or laminate flooring I should say, in my front room and my dining room to expose the original floorboards, and then sanding them back and then staining them and oiling them and putting some filler in between them and then sorting out the skirting boards. And I'm nearly done now, but all of that has taken up a lot of my time, so I have not been as present to the internet community as I perhaps have been in the past. I'm not saying should be, because quite honestly home comes first, or it should come first. But I'm here now and we're going to take a look at some special Christmassy festive editions. They're not really that Christmassy festive. They did do some Christmassy festive editions, we'll find them in the future, but these are not really particularly festive, but we're going to do them anyway. The December 1984 and 1994 editions of White Dwarf. I am on the brink of having 3 weeks off work, which I'm very excited about. So hopefully during that time I'm going to be finishing my undead army. That's my big plan for the next 3 weeks. But it also includes New Year's, and you'll know that my New Year's Eve tradition is to do some Bob Ross. So I am going to do some Bob Ross, and my plan, it was my plan last year and it didn't happen last year. It's my plan this year, we'll see if it happens, is to do my big background for my table. I keep putting it off because I keep thinking I'm not good enough, I need to practice a bit more first. Do you know what? I'm not, sorry, ignore next door's fan turning up, sorry about that. Do you know what, I'm not. I'm going to do 2 more practices I think, and hopefully I'll get those done in the weeks before Christmas, and then New Year I will do my big, or at least the week following New Year, because it's going to take me a couple of sessions. I'm not going to do it all in one go. I'm going to do top half Sky and then the bottom half, but I might do it in 2 or 3 sittings, and I might film that, we'll see. But anyway, I will show it to you, so hopefully that's going to happen. But it should mean that I'm at home a bit more, have a bit more free time. My camera's all fixed now, as you can tell from the fact that I'm using it, so that's exciting. I should have some time to record some more videos, which means that come January onwards I should have a bit more to be throwing you away. So here's the professional bit. You know, like this video, comment on this video, please do comment on this video, it's nice to hear from you. Hit the subscribe button, hit the alerts button so that you can know when I've got new videos out. And then yeah, I'll try to put some stuff out. It won't be out over Christmas. Nothing will be out before the 9th is a Monday, 10th, 11th. So 11th of January onwards, maybe I'll start putting some stuff out. But I'm relaxing, I'm recuperating, and I'm not really thinking about anything over the Christmas period because, yeah, life is hectic, life is stressful at the moment, and has been all year. So I'm taking some time off to myself to do fun things and paint my undead. That's what I'm doing. But enough about me, enough wattering about me. Let's have a look at some more vintage White Dwarfs, and I will go somewhere where the light's a bit better so you can see what I'm doing. See you over there. Okay, here we are. Our last look at 1984 and 1994 before we go on to 1985 and 1995. Let's have a look at the 90s White Dwarf this time. We'll start this side with the lovely cover here of some Titans, rather majestic medieval Titans there. It's a bit of a shame a quarter of this image is taken up with this package for this free system, but never mind, you kind of get a sense of the artwork, I guess, and it's nice of them to give away a free plastic miniature once in a while, isn't it? Nice Christmas gift. There we go. Lovely colours on the inside as always. Remember this one, the White Dwarf presents the Chaos Dwarfs, selection of articles from Chaos Dwarfs in White Dwarf, because they didn't get their own armies book. They never were a particularly popular army, which is a shame because I'm quite a big fan of the Byzantium, Babylonian big hatted Assyrian Chaos Dwarves. I think they're rather nice. Here's an advert asking for people to apply to be assistant games developers. I don't know if we saw this in the last one. I can't remember whether I've only read it for this one or whether we saw it in the last video as well. But look here, last year we took the courageous step of employing 3 enthusiastic young gamers at the Games Workshop studio to play games. Here they are. Recognise any of these guys? I'm sure you do. I'm sure you recognise Ian and Gavin and Mark, who got to live in the Warhammer house and play Games Workshop games all the time and not really get paid for it, but at least get their keep, and then went on to write some rather wonderful stuff. So if you wanted to be one of the next intake, you could apply here. Lucky you. There you go. Another Talisman adventure, but we saw this one last time. Here's how to paint your free miniature. That's nice, isn't it? There you go. There's your classic Khorne Chaos Warrior. World Eaters of Khorne, there you go. And here's the heavy metal version of it. And here's a rather simplified 3-step process, but good enough to get you started if you're just starting out. I think that's my main criticism, and I guess we'll come to it in later editions. They did do some more in-depth. They did some on painting faces and painting horses. At this point though, all of the painting tutorials we've seen in White Dwarf have been very much here's what to do if you are a beginner and you have no idea what you're doing, which is great for the beginners. And I guess with a monthly supplement where you can't really get back issues, they kind of need to be catering to people who might be picking it up for the first time, but it would be nice to see some more advanced painting tutorials as well. Kazachan Jungle Fighters, one of the classic Imperial Guard regiments. They seemed for quite a long time to get sidelined by the Cadians, which I think is a shame, because I really like the varied world type Imperial Guard forces, and I'm pleased to be seeing some of them coming back now, even though, you know, they're horrible big plastic miniatures that I don't really like. But nice at least that they're recognising that that the Guard are drawn from such a myriad of worlds. It's a bit sad to just have Kazachan after, just have Cadian after Cadian after Cadian. Astra Militaris, I should say now. They're not Imperial Guard, but you know what I mean. They are Imperial Guard, aren't they? You know what I mean if I say Imperial Guard. Here's Jake Thornton talking about cavalry in Warhammer. Some more tactics articles on use of, he says, 3 different types of cavalry. Light cavalry, heavy cavalry, and skirmishing cavalry, or sort of horse archers really is what he means by that. Of which only 2 of those, he says, are of particular use, the skirmishing type and the heavy, but recognises that a lot of armies don't have access to one or other of those types, and gives some ideas of what to do with light cavalry if that's what's available to you. Fists of Death from Gavin Thorpe echoes the title. Look there, Fists of Death is the title of this painting apparently on the cover. So this is also the title of this article on how to arm your Titans for fulfilling various roles in combat. And I'm picking up on this again with the tactics article and with this article on Titans. There's very little background stuff in here. It plows straight on into how should you equip your Titan for the role that you want to give it. So at this point in time, you're not getting an awful lot of background to stuff from White Dwarf, and even in the games themselves, the rulebooks at this time are quite fluff light. You're not getting an awful lot of background. In the earlier, or between here and here, issues that we'll probably come to at some point, they'd introduce it with a bit of background and then they'd get on with the rules or the tactics, but That largely seems to have died out by this point, except for the little, I don't know if there is one here, but there's probably one in the Warhammer article. No, there isn't. Sometimes they have the little boxes with little snippets of fluff, but I can't find one. There isn't one attached to those. Here's a look back at Games Day '94. That was held recently, obviously, in the National Indoor Arena. Look here, lots of throngs of people. And these are the images of Games Day that I remember looking at in White Dwarf and thinking, that looks really exciting, that looks great, I'd love to go there. The one time that I went to Games Day, gotta say, it was really disappointing. Yeah, it was really bland. None of the tables were particularly impressive. Didn't get to speak to many of the staff. They didn't have any of the big displays up. I didn't really feel like I could get involved in any of the games. It wasn't very inclusive. The Golden Demon was okay to mooch through, but you couldn't really stop and have a look at anything because you were constantly getting pushed along. It was like sort of walking past the Crown Jewels cases. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed with the Games Day that I went to, but never mind. These people look like they are having fun. Here's some more Blood Bowl. This is actually quite an entertaining article as Blood Bowl articles go. You know, I'm not a big fan of Blood Bowl, but as you might be able to imply from the fact that there's some Blood Bowl halflings here, and we're talking about the small and the short bit, we are talking about halflings in Blood Bowl. This is an article discussing a non-competitive side. Okay, grant you, it's only quite a short article, even though I did miss a page. There you go. This is an article in White Dwarf discussing a side that is not built for optimization, but discussing some fun tactics that you can have with it, which I think is quite entertaining. I'm a big fan of not building lists for optimization, but building them for fun and seeing what happens. And then here we are with another Orcs versus Space Marines battle report. Funny how it's always seems to be Orcs versus Space Marines or Eldar. We've seen some Eldar in the past. Not an awful lot of choice for armies for 40k at this period, it would seem. But again, it's what you get in the box, so Orcs versus Space Marines makes sense. But there is a bit of a difference here with the Space Marines, because these are Fred Reed from the Bristol Stores Howling Griffins that we saw on the back cover of a previous White Dwarf. Here they are in action, but not all of them. He moans how few Space Marines that you get for your points. A common moan, but also the reason why a lot of people collect Space Marines, I guess. Not too much to collect and paint. And if you're painting them like this, you probably don't want to paint that many of them, because let's face it, that's a lot of yellow, which is horrible to paint. And an awful lot of quartering, and having done a yellow and red quartered Empire army fairly recently, with many more figures than this, I have had enough of painting yellow and red quarters for a very long time. Aren't these battlefields great though? I've said it before, but look at the really bright greens and reds in there. You know, even when they've got somebody coming in from another store, you've still got this yellow and red, green and red contrasting colour scheme going on that really makes these photos jump out, which of course is why they did it in the red era, because it makes the photos pop really nicely before everything went grim, dark and boring. And the Space Marines win fairly categorically. Fairly categorically there. What's going on at Christmas at mail order? Nothing very much. No more festive treats besides your free Corn Berserker. The army boxes here though, remember those? Remember when you could buy an entire army for £100? I never did, because I never had £100 back in the days to splash on an army. But the contents of those boxes would go for significantly more than £100 now, so it would have been an investment. But I also wouldn't still have them, because I gave all of my Warhammer away like a fool, because I thought I was never going to play it again. Here we are with some boring Chaos Warriors. They're not boring, they're alright, but compared to the Chaos Warriors that came with the Realm of Chaos stuff earlier on, they're pretty tame, these ones. Not very chaotic really, more sort of regimented chaos. That's Panther, very popular unit, I believe. Some epic-y stuff, some Titans, which, let's face it, I mean, Titans are cool, right? Who doesn't love big stompy robots? But there's a limit to big stompy robots, because I really like this size, and in fact I've got a couple of Titans that I want to paint just because they're Titans, and they're this size. When I was at Warhammer World last year looking at the new Adeptus Titanicus stuff, I mean, that stuff is huge. Talk about scale creep, they've really upsized everything. And I just couldn't imagine having the space to store all of that and get it out and play with it. It's too big now. There's a limit to how much bigger is better, and I think Games Workshop have largely exceeded it. Now I think smaller is definitely a lot better. Lovely, lovely chaplains. I'm a big fan of these. I'm not a massive fan of Space Marines in general, but I am quite a big fan of the chaplain designs with their skulls and these armor variants. But I notice that the best armor variant isn't there. There's no Thunder armor in this lineup. Thunder armor is the best armor, and I would like a Space Marine army of just Thunder armored troops. Like that's going to happen. Maybe I should sculpt some. The Arbites. These were great. These not Judge Dredd figures that we've seen in a previous White Dwarf, but I didn't tell you the story that it's not really a story, it's not that interesting, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I first came across these when Necromunda was a thing in White Dwarf, and we will get there hopefully in, what's it, a year or two's time. Is it 95 it comes out? No, 98, probably more like 97, 98, so maybe a couple of years before we get there, but never mind. But yeah, I came across these in a Necromunda article, and there was no reference to them. And they weren't in 40k at the time, and I'd never seen them before. What are those? And it took ages before I went into a Games Workshop and had a look in the catalogue and found out that you could buy them still, and they were Imperial Arbites. But I think they're great. I think they're wonderful figures. Really cool figures. There we go. And on the back cover, Chaos Dwarfs, because the Chaos Dwarf book is out, right? Versus High Elves, because Imric came out recently, so that's, you know, bit of marketing on the back cover. Again, look at the green and the red. Look at it pop. Look at it pop. Even among the high elves here, you know, they've got their red spears. There's a reason. There's a reason for red spears, because it pops in print. So there we are. Our final White Dwarf of 1994. So let's put that to one side, and let's go further back in time to 1984 in December. This rather snowy scene. I believe this is a Chris Achilleos cover again. Starting to be able to recognise his work, even though I wasn't that familiar with his name a couple of years ago. I don't know what this is from. Anyone know what this is from? You can tell it's a snowy scene because the damsel who is clinging to the back of this knight obviously being rescued because feminism wasn't a thing in the 1980s, of course, not in the wargaming circles anyway, but at least, you know, she doesn't have a furry bikini on, she is actually clad because it's cold. So yes, Chris has obviously had some some sense of reality, decency, don't know. Speaking of Chris Achilleos, here is a jigsaw puzzle of his Elric drawings. There's some quite nice drawings here. I can't imagine them working as jigsaw puzzles though. I'm not a big fan of jigsaw puzzles as art because they're all crisscrossed with lots of little cut lines, so you never really can see the actual picture. I'd much rather have a poster than a made-up jigsaw. And it bears reading the introduction. Welcome to the Christmas '84 edition of the most amazing games magazine ever produced. Between these covers you will find every answer you ever wanted, and in this advert you will find every game you ever wanted. Merry Christmas. Copyright Creepy Toad Public Relations Specialist, December 1984. Well, man things. As it's Christmas, I decided to get somebody else to write to you. Yes, they don't really mean this gushing thing at the beginning here. No, 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 that's far too gushing. And so do it so as not to offend you personally, I think is a load of drivel and not worth the effort for the likes of you man things, but Zlarg has a sense of humour. Well, there you go. Thank you, Zlarg, for your Christmas greetings. There's a little introduction here from Ian Livingston that also bears reading because it is relevant to modern times. What is to become of metal gaming figures? That's the question on many people's lips as we go to press after the astounding trebling in the cost price of casting metal recently. Yeah, in the last 2 years, the cost of metal, the metal that I buy, has doubled. So this is nothing new. Actually, it's fallen back a little bit now, but it's still much higher than it was a couple of years back. Already most figure manufacturers have announced price rises and all have warned of more to come. Plastic figures might be one answer. Citadel are remodelling their whole range to take snap-on plastic bases and weapons immediately. Haha, the rise of the slaughter base. Mike will be fuming at this point and saying, no, 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 it's all gone wrong. So sorry, Mike. I actually like plastic slaughter bases because to me they make the figure feel like it's on a display plinth. That's why I like slaughter bases to be left black around the edges, or I went through a phase of trying to paint them to look like little wooden plinths, because that to me contains that figure on its own little display plinth. But I know people who like it to blend into the board, or who don't like it to be seen as a display piece would probably differ in opinion. But anyway, I like slaughter bases. And we'll be launching a full range of totally plastic 30mm figures in 1985. Ooh, already deciding that they're going to call them something slightly bigger. Still very small, obviously, by today's standards, but at least they're recognising that they're slightly bigger in plastic. But the investment needed for such a venture is high and well out of the reach of smaller manufacturers, indeed, as it still is. Despite what people might say about Seacast, and don't ask me about Seacast, the less said about that, the better. It does seem, however, that gaming with metal figures will become more of a luxury, with the average price of a humanoid figure being 60 pence in 1985. Ooh, luxury, and even with the cost of inflation, what are we talking now for a single metal fantasy figure? It's got to be £4 or £5 minimum from most small manufacturers. I've seen, some people want £6, £7, £8 for a single figure, and sometimes I get that with things like Darksword, where you've got very, very elaborate models where you're clearly buying a character for your RPG, or you're buying them for painting for display rather than mass fantasy battles. Maybe it's worth spending that, but to my mind, I'm a bit of a cheapskate. £3-4 I think is reasonable for a single figure. I don't often spend much higher than that. There we go. It might be considered that this still represents good value for money. Yes, but the percentage rise is a little difficult to swallow. Maybe we can have a look, actually. Let's see, is there a... Yes, so here are the Denizen fantasy prices. I thought there might be a Denizen advert in the back here. 35 pence, 42 pence. FA37 must be a troll or something, and FA40 I guess might be a dragon, because that's like £1.5, that's really high. But yeah, mostly 35, 42 pence per figure. So you're talking about a 50% rise if you're talking about going up to 60 pence. So that's fairly significant. And my figures start at £3 a figure, so they would be going up to £4.50, which would be out of the range that I would pay for them. So there you go, that is quite a rise. Be interesting to find out, because obviously there's no, it doesn't say what these are, it just says what the codes are, and these are their new prices, so presumably these have gone up as well. But yeah, what's a Denizen FA37 or FA40? Maybe I should look it up, because they're still in production and they're wonderful figures, and go and support them because they're a brilliant little company. Really, really good. Anyway, right, enough of that. Let's plow on in. An introduction to superhero games by Simon Burley. We've seen Simon Burley before talking about different types of games. Here he is introducing superhero games as a new concept, new players, advice and new DM's advice for getting into playing superhero games. Okay, I'm good. I don't know why H.G. Wells' The Croquet Player has been highlighted here. This was highlighted before I got this magazine as part of a bulk plot second hand. So yes, I couldn't tell you why that was highlighted. Maybe somebody really liked the sound of it. The Bleeding Stone of Iftar, a Call of Cthulhu scenario by Steve Williams with John Sutherland. An interesting one, suffers from the same issue that many Call of Cthulhu scenarios suffer from, in that if your players fail their investigation checks, you don't find most of the clues. And in this case, that would leave them wandering around on an archaeological dig site, not really knowing what to do, and probably going, oh well, stuff this then, I will go back to the nearest city, and not having discovered anything or done anything remotely interesting. So yeah, definitely something that would need fudging a little bit, I think, by the DM, especially as this is not a very wide-ranging, I mean it's quite a short article, but it's not a very wide-ranging sandboxy, it's a very railroady, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this, without really explaining how you can lead your players to do those things, without just saying, oh right, you need to do this now, you need to do this now, and fudging all their checks. But it's a fun principle. A team of adventurers find themselves confronted by a ne'er-do-well mogul in a city who is funding an archaeological dig that's being conducted by a rather eccentric professor, and both the mogul and the professor have ulterior motives. But what's quite nice here is the use of actual black and white photographs of archaeological sites in, I guess, in Egypt. Not absolutely sure, but somewhere anyway. It'd be nice to present your players with this, to give them a sense of the atmosphere and the idea of what they are looking at. Hints and hazards for the professional privateer in science fiction role-playing games. How to prevent people from storming your spaceship, and how referees can deal with boarding actions to prevent them just being an absolute kill fest that destroys the game. So yes, if you want to recreate that scene from the beginning of a famous sci-fi franchise, you can do here, and this is how to make it not suddenly end all of your players in a rather brutal way. Thrud the Sophisticated. No, I don't think so. More Thrud back to himself next year in the next episode. The Fear of Leafield, an AD&D adventure for 4 to 6 characters of level 3 to 5. The players find themselves immersed in a rural setting where some mysterious deaths have been reported. Some maps in this horrible lurid purple again. Why do they insist on these horrible colours that mean that you can't... I mean, this is probably, to your eyes, this is just a purple hexagon, right? I can just about, if I squint, see the little black lines on it. Horrible, horrible choice. Just have these as black and white maps. They look much nicer as black and white maps. Anyway, yes, mysterious deaths that are in fact to do with a local slavery and drug trafficking ring, which the players need to break and eliminate. Still computer gaming in White Dwarf. Some more creatures, endless waves of creatures. The Travellers have another adventure. The letters page is quite amusing, or this one is quite amusing. Where is it? The editorial on White Dwarf is becoming increasingly inane and immature and tends to patronise the readers. Is this part of a sinister plot to turn our noble pastime into a children's game and thus open a bigger market for the game moguls? Well, yes. And in fact, haven't we had some recent murmurings from Wizards of the Coast talking about how D&D is not being properly monetised? Well, yes, apparently this was seen to be at work at the time as well. I haven't got any of the older, well I've got a couple of the older editions, but not of any of the really old editions. I started this series on the oldest of the complete run of White Dwarfs that I have, so the earlier ones I've got only a handful of, so I can't really assess whether the quality of the writing has gone seriously downhill. I have to say though, this person writing, there are good times ahead, because we haven't got there yet, but again hopefully, and it may be a couple of years down the line. Obviously doing one a month, it takes quite a long time to get there, but eventually we're going to get to the Warhammer Fantasy roleplay articles in White Dwarf, and they are some of my favourites. They are well worth digging into. If you haven't looked at them already, for whatever system you're playing, it's well worth digging into the writing there. It's top notch. But yes, I will agree that some of the submissions in previous White Dwarfs, as we have discussed, are not wonderful. We already have a Dungeons and Dragons cartoon series on telly, and we've got another film coming. I will admit, I quite like the first Dungeons and Dragons film, even though, let's face it, it's entirely pointless. I mean, they could have just done away with the entire storyline in the first 5 minutes by just not going and finding that rod. But it's quite entertaining, and it's hilariously budget looking for the time. So I mean, the posters for this new one look atrocious, so maybe it will be in the same vein. I do hope so. It will be entertaining. And those revolting plastic figures that have the temerity to call themselves Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in the toy shops. Is White Dwarf now muscling in on the Beano territory? Well, I don't think we're quite there. I mean, I don't think the Beano would accept travellers. Might accept Thrud, but maybe not the travellers. This is an entertaining article. This is one of my favourite articles, actually, having said that the quality is not brilliant. Just because, look, it's balls of fluff. It's fur balls and wereballs and Dragon Balls, before Dragon Ball Z obviously was a thing. Yes, somebody has been inspired by little balls of fluff that they found under their bed, and turned them into these rather cute little furry creatures. Maybe I should sculpt these. I'd like to sculpt these, but sculpting fur to look like, or hair to look like hair, fluff to look like fluff is difficult. We have another painting article here from Gary Chalk and Joe Deaver. Also a beginner's guide to painting, so you know, a few years difference, 10 years difference, and they're still teaching beginners how to do some very basic paint jobs. But in this case they're talking about washing. There's a few here that they're not really step by step. I liked what Games Workshop did in the painting series, where they had the same figure at different stages, because it meant you could really see the difference. Here it's step by step, but it's step by step with different figures, so it's not really obvious what the change between each is, but you kind of get the impression. But there are some lovely miniatures here. A Rauparth the T-Rex with an ogre on it. The Tony Ackland Wyvern, the first Wyvern, maybe the first Orc Wyvern. I have to say, not my favourite. The one, although I hate snakes, you might know that I hate snakes, the one with the snake-headed, it is definitely the iconic Wyvern to my mind, rather than this one, but you know, this one's nice. Some Spacefarers. The Ali and Trish Morrison cake topper makes an appearance, which is a rather wonderful thing. I went through a little period where lots of my friends were getting married and I was sculpting cake toppers for a bunch of them, so I did loads of cake topper sculpts, and it is much fun to do, to try and capture the character of the people getting married. And this Ali Morrison as a troll and Trish Morrison as some kind of harpy. Does that say much about their character, or is that just somebody having a poke at them? I don't know, but yeah, it's nice thing to have. Here's the Spine Dragon, and this surprised me because we're in 1984 still here. I was sure the Great Spine Dragon was out 86, 87, 88. I'm shocked, absolutely shocked, that Nick Bibby's iconic dragon was around in 1984, but there you go. Apparently it was, as it is here, and it was £15 at the time. Work out your your price conversion on that. You won't get one for £15 these days. Got some more classified ads. Another edition of the Androx Diaries. I've been rather scathing of the last two editions of the Androx Diaries, saying they were rather poorly written. In this instance, I'm going to revise my judgment. I think the person who is writing them is finding their style. This one is actually quite entertaining, so maybe that story will give us some more entertainment at in future editions. Nice to see some photographs of miniatures, albeit black and white, but inked. Reader design. I don't actually know them. And something's been cut out here. Something to do with Games Fair 85, I'd imagine, rather than the bottom half of the Tabletop Games catalogue. So yes, who was going to Games Fair 85 or wanted a discount or something, I don't know, whoever had this previously was going clearly. There we go. So we have White Dwarf, December 1984 and 1994. Hope you've enjoyed that little rundown through some more classic White Dwarfs, and we will have some more in the new year when we look at 1985 and 1995. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave me a comment, hit the alerts button so you get notified when we do new videos. Yeah, that's the professional things, right? That's done. Like it, leave a comment, hit subscribe, hit the alerts on. I did it, done it, sorted. I'm all professional now. And hopefully we'll have some more videos for you very soon. Hope you have a nice Christmas and a lovely New Year, and I shall see you in 2023 for 1985 and 1995. Cheerio.